December 19th, 1944, near Losheim Gap, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The wind howls through the black pines like a living thing, rattling frozen branches and carrying with it the distant thud of artillery. Snow crunches under heavy boots as Gefreiter Karl Weiss, 26 years old, 326th Volksgrenadier Division, tightens his grip on his carabiner 98K. His breath fogs the air in short, shallow bursts. He hasn't eaten properly in 3 days. Only a thin turnip soup ladled out behind the lines. Barely warm, barely there. Ahead of him, the forest opens just enough to reveal the wreckage of an American defensive position. Foxholes abandoned in haste. A .30 caliber Browning machine gun half buried in snow, its barrel still blackened from recent fire. The Americans had been here minutes ago, maybe less. Weiss raises a gloved fist. The squad halts, somewhere to the west. A Panzerkampfwagen 4 growls forward, its engine coughing like an old man with a smoker's lungs. Fuel is precious now. Every meter of advance is debated. Calculated, argued over by officers who know the truth, but no longer say it aloud. Germany is running on fumes. The Ardennes offensive, Wacht am Rhein, was supposed to change everything. A single, massive blow. Break through the thinly held American lines. Cross the Meuse. Split the Allied armies in two. Force a negotiation. Force peace. But here, on the ground, the reality feels different. Weiss and his squad move in cautiously. An overturned Willys MB Jeep sits at an angle near the tree line. One wheel still spinning lazily, squeaking with every rotation. Bullet holes pepper the windshield. The hood is warm to the touch. They ran. Mutters Unteroffizier Franz Heller. The squad leader, his voice hoarse, left everything? That almost never happens. Heller gestures forward. 2 men peel off. Checking the perimeter, Weiss approaches the Jeep, eyes scanning for booby traps. The Americans are clever that way. But there's nothing, just a canvas cover stretched over the rear cargo area, dusted with snow. Weiss pulls it back. Inside are wooden crates, stenciled in English. One has split open during the firefight, its lid cracked. He sees metal tins first, rations. No doubt, Spam, crackers, powdered eggs, normal things. Then he notices the smell. Not oil, not cordite, not the sour stink of unwashed men. Chocolate. Weiss freezes. For a moment, he thinks the hunger is finally playing tricks on him. He leans closer, brushing snow from the broken crate. Inside is a cardboard box, wrapped in waxed paper, tied with string. There's a label, slightly smudged but readable. Chocolate cake. Handle with care. He stares at the words, uncomprehending. Behind him, boots crunch closer. Heller peers over his shoulder. So does Private Otto Lehmann, barely 19, cheeks hollow, eyes sunken. No, Lehmann whispers. That's not real. Heller reaches in, cuts the string with his bayonet, and peels back the paper. It is real. A full-size chocolate cake, intact, thick frosting, slightly cracked from the cold but unmistakably fresh. The kind you'd see in a bakery window back home in Cologne. Before the bombs, before the firestorms, before hunger became normal. For several seconds, no one speaks. The wind keeps blowing. Somewhere, artillery fires again. The war continues without them. Weiss feels something twist in his chest. Not joy, not relief, something colder. How? Lehmann starts, then stops. He doesn't finish the sentence. Because the question is too big. Heller straightens slowly. Looking down the forest road, the Americans fled along. This wasn't looted, he says. They were bringing it forward. He looks back at the Jeep. At the crates, at the cake. From across the ocean, he adds quietly. Weiss thinks of the fuel trucks that never arrived. The ammunition counted round by round. The winter coats promised and then forgotten. He thinks of letters from home describing cold apartments, dark cities, children fainting in school from hunger. And here, on a captured American frontline Jeep, in the middle of the Ardennes, sits a cake. Fresh, whole, real. The realization has not yet fully formed, but something has cracked open. just like the crate, and it will not close again. December 19th, 1944, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Unteroffizier Franz Heller does not touch the cake at first. He's been a soldier too long for that. Too many times. Good fortune has come with a cost. Mines under bread carts. Grenades wired to doors. Hope followed by blood. He scans the tree line again. Then the road. Then the sky. Nothing. Only snow drifting down. Slow and indifferent. Lehman, he says. Check the other crates. Lehman snaps out of his trance and moves quickly, prying open another box. Inside are ration tins marked U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps, neatly packed, each one pristine. Another crate holds canned fruit, peaches and pears suspended in syrup. Another, fresh white bread, wrapped in cloth, already stiffening in the cold but still smelling faintly of yeast. Weiss feels dizzy. This isn't rear area stuff, Lehman says, voice shaking now. This was meant for men up front. Heller nods slowly. Frontline supply. The words land heavier than artillery. The Americans hadn't just eaten well. They had eaten normally. While German units advanced with horses pulling artillery because trucks sat empty for lack of fuel, the enemy was distributing baked goods, luxuries, within days of preparation. Across an ocean, through ports, rail yards, truck convoys, and into a forest under fire. Weiss imagines the journey of that cake. A bakery somewhere in Pennsylvania or Ohio. A woman in an apron smoothing frosting. Unaware of Carl Weiss freezing in Belgium. Packed carefully. Loaded onto a train. Then a ship. Then another train. Then a truck. And finally, this jeep. The sheer scale of it makes his stomach turn more than hunger ever could. A shout echoes from down the road. Another German squad approaches, followed by a lieutenant from battalion headquarters. Lieutenant Ernst Vogel, early 30s, iron cross on his collar, eyes sharp but tired. What have you found? Vogel asks. Heller steps aside, revealing the open crate. Vogel stops dead. He removes his gloves slowly, as if afraid the cake might vanish if he moves too fast. He leans in, presses a finger lightly into the frosting. It gives way, soft. Mein Gott, he murmurs. For a moment, Vogel is not an officer. He is a man who has eaten ersatz bread made from sawdust and potato peels. A man who has watched mechanics drain fuel from abandoned vehicles because resupply never came. A man who knows the offensive schedule by heart and also knows it's already slipping. Who authorized this? Lehman blurts out. Who sends cake to the front? Vogel exhales through his nose. A short, bitter sound. An army that can afford to... He straightens, looking around at the men now gathering. Drawn by rumor, by smell, by disbelief. No one smiles. No one laughs. There is no celebration. Instead, there is a quiet, spreading unease. Because this cake is not just food. It is proof. Vogel orders the men to divide the rations properly. No hoarding. No chaos. Discipline still matters. But when Heller carefully cuts the cake with his bayonet, handing out small portions on ration tin lids, something fundamental shifts. Weiss takes his piece. The frosting melts slightly against his fingers. He hesitates, then bites. Sugar floods his mouth. Cocoa, rich, unmistakable. His eyes sting, and for a terrifying second, he thinks he might cry. He swallows hard. Around him, men chew slowly, reverently. Some close their eyes. Lehman laughs once, sharp and disbelieving, then stops, embarrassed. This is madness. Someone whispers. No, Vogel replies quietly. This is industry. The wind picks up again, carrying the distant rumble of American artillery regrouping somewhere beyond the trees. The enemy is pulling back, but not breaking, not panicking. Weiss looks at the jeep again, at the abundance, at the casual confidence implied by such a shipment. The Ardennes offensive was supposed to shock the Allies, catch them unprepared. Instead, this is the real shock. An army that can lose ground, abandon vehicles, and still leave behind a chocolate cake. An army whose war machine hums so steadily it can spare sweetness for men in foxholes. Vogel replaces his gloves. Finish quickly, he orders. We move in 10 minutes. No one argues as they step away from the jeep. Weiss glances back one last time. Snow has begun to settle on the empty crate, on the tire tracks, on the place where belief quietly died. The cake is gone. But the realization remains. December 20th, 1944. Eastern edge of the Ardennes. Before dawn, the march resumes under a sky the color of old iron. Snow falls harder now. Thick flakes that muffle sound and swallow footprints almost as soon as they're made. The men move in single file along a forest track barely wide enough for a wagon, rifles slung low, shoulders hunched against the cold. Karl Weiss walks near the rear. The taste of chocolate still lingers, cloying and unreal. It should have lifted his spirits. It should have felt like a gift. Instead, it sits in his gut like a stone. No one talks about the cake. They talk about normal things, routes, enemy positions, whether the Americans will counterattack by noon. But beneath every word is an absence, a shared understanding that cannot be spoken aloud without cracking something vital. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. They reach a temporary halt near a frozen stream. Vogel confers with another officer over a map spread across the hood of a Kubelwagen, its paint chipped, its fuel gauge hovering near empty. Orders are exchanged in clipped tones. Advance again at first light. Press west, always west. Heller crouches beside Weiss, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. He offers one. Weiss accepts. You ever work in a factory? Heller asks quietly. Weiss shakes his head. My father did. Machine tools. Before the war, Heller exhales smoke. I was a clerk. Hamburg docks. Saw the ships come in from everywhere. Coffee, sugar, bananas. He snorts softly. Seems like another lifetime. Weiss knows what he's really saying. The Americans didn't just have cake. They had systems, redundancy, rail networks untouched by bombers, ports that worked, oil fields that weren't under siege, factories that ran day and night without fear of being reduced to rubble before morning. And Germany? Germany was burning. They move again. As the day wears on, resistance stiffens. American rearguard units fight stubbornly. Buying time? M1, Garands crack from tree lines. Mortars thump. A German soldier ahead of Weiss goes down screaming, blood steaming against the snow. Medics are slow to arrive. There are not enough of them anymore. By afternoon, the advance stalls. Vogel stands with binoculars, jaw clenched. Fuel truck hasn't arrived. He mutters to Heller. Again, Heller doesn't respond. Weiss crouches in a shallow depression, pulling his greatcoat tighter. He thinks of the jeep, of the crates, of how casually the Americans must have planned to eat that cake. Maybe after a patrol. Maybe as a birthday surprise for someone whose name he'll never know. He wonders what American soldiers think when they see German prisoners. Thin, hollow-eyed, wrapped in threadbare coats. Do they feel pity or confidence? As darkness falls, word filters down the line. American armor has been spotted to the south. Fresh units, well supplied. The offensive timetable slips another notch. No one needs to explain what that means. That night, Weiss dreams of bread lines, of sirens, of his mother cutting slices thinner and thinner, pretending not to notice. He wakes before dawn, heart pounding, the taste of chocolate gone at last. And with it, the last illusion. The next morning brings orders to dig in. Hold ground. Wait. Waiting has become the defining action of the German army. Weiss watches American planes streak overhead later that day. P-47 Thunderbolts. Engines roaring with confidence now that the weather has cleared. They are not hunting desperately. They are not rushing. They are methodical, like an army that knows time is on its side. Weiss presses himself deeper into the earth as bombs fall somewhere down the line. The ground shudders. Snow cascades from trees. He thinks again of the cake, not with hunger, but with understanding. December 22nd, 1944. Near Street, Vith. Belgium. The sky clears just enough to doom them. Sunlight breaks through the low clouds, pale but merciless, and with it comes the distant thunder of engines. dozens of them, growing louder by the second. Karl Weiss doesn't need to look up to know what's coming. Every man in the tree line feels it at the same time. Air power. Deckung! Someone shouts. The first thunderbolts dive out of the clouds like steel hawks. They're 50-caliber machine guns stitching the road with fire. Trucks explode. A half-track erupts in flame. Horses scream. Thrashing in their harnesses before going still, Weiss presses his face into the frozen dirt, hands over his helmet, the concussion rattling his teeth. The attack is precise, relentless, almost clinical. These pilots are not guessing. They know exactly where to hit. When the planes finally peel away, the road is a ruin. Smoke hangs low. Fuel burns in iridescent puddles. What little there was. A supply column meant to push the offensive forward is now scrap metal and corpses. Vogel stands up slowly, binoculars hanging uselessly against his chest. His face has aged 10 years in 2 minutes. "That was our last fuel," he says flatly. No one argues. No one needs to. The Ardennes offensive is not officially over. Not yet. Orders from Berlin will insist otherwise. Maps will still show arrows pushing west. But here, among the smoking wreckage, the truth settles in with brutal clarity. You cannot outrun an enemy who feeds his soldiers cake and fuels his tanks without hesitation. They withdraw under cover of darkness that night, step by careful step. The retreat is not called a retreat. Of course, it never is, but every man knows what backward footsteps feel like. As they pass through another abandoned American position, Weiss spots something else left behind. A folded newspaper, damp but readable. The headline speaks of Christmas approaching, of home, of optimism. The Americans expect to be here long enough to celebrate. Weiss crumples the paper, stuffing it into his coat without knowing why. By Christmas Eve, the cold becomes unbearable. Ammunition is rationed, food even more so. The men chew frozen bread and speak in whispers, as if loud voices might attract despair itself. Someone mentions the cake again, just once. "Do you think they baked another one?" Lehman asks quietly. No one answers, because the question is no longer absurd. It is inevitable. On December 26th, American forces counterattack in force. Armor, infantry, artillery, all moving in coordination. The German line bends, then breaks. Units dissolve into fragments, each fighting its own small, hopeless battle. Weiss fires until his rifle clicks empty. He falls back with Heller, with Lehman, with men whose names he never learned. Somewhere behind them, Vogel is wounded, captured or killed. No one knows. Snow keeps falling. By the time Weiss is taken prisoner days later, his hands raised, his stomach hollow, he is no longer surprised by anything. The American soldier who takes his rifle looks well-fed, clean-shaven, calm. Behind him, a truck idles, engine humming steadily. In its bed are crates, neatly stacked, marked for forward distribution. Weiss does not look inside. He doesn't need to. The war, he realizes, was decided long before the Ardennes, long before this forest, long before the first shot of the offensive. It was decided in factories, in shipping lanes, in bakeries that could afford to send sweetness into hell itself. And as Weiss is marched away, he understands at last what that cake truly was. Not a luxury, a warning,